All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Hello, hello. We are here with some more PGA DFS discussion. This time, a live Q&A. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and we're here to give you all the picks, lineup strategies, betting market analysis, weather analysis, everything you need to crush the PGA Championship. And I have the pleasure of being joined by our golf writer, the mysterious Niromada. Nira, what's up, buddy? How's it going?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a major week, so I'm excited. Always busy weeks for me, but I love it. So let's get after it.
So here's what you can expect in this video. It is a live version, so if you're watching this live, you see the live chat box to the right there. Go ahead and ask any questions you have over the next 25 or 30 minutes or so. We'll weave those questions into the show and answer them as we see them. Stick around to about the midway point of the show when we start handing out the picks, our best plays, what the betting markets are telling us, and what the ownership is telling us. At the beginning, we'll analyze what this course looks like, the types of golfers you want to play in your lineups based on their course fit, as well as some weather analysis because it looks like it should play a factor this week. So, Nero, you broke down the course very well, obviously, in the daily plug, occupyfantasy.com, which is Nero's best plays for the week, his lineup strategies, course breakdowns. I'm going to pull that up right now. So Nero, they're playing here, and the last time we saw an event here was 2013. However, there was a redesign at Oak Hill Country Club, and that redesign certainly impacts how we should select golfers this week. What have you seen from the redesign, and what do you think will be the most important characteristics for golfers in our PGA DFS lineups this week?
One of the most important characteristics we'll get to next with the weather, but everyone should know right off the bat this is in Rochester, New York. It's very north, like you're almost in Toronto, basically in Canada. So it's middle of May. It's still fairly cool there. So that is going to have an impact. That also had an impact on the grass conditions. That had a wet winter, wet spring. So if you've been paying attention, you've seen a lot of pictures of people dropping balls in the rough and hearing people talking about the rough and how thick and juicy we'll say that it is. But the course it's a Donald Ross design. Donald Ross courses usually feature raised up greens that slope from back to front, have runoff areas around them, and are green complexes allow for a lot of different pin positions. So the green complexes can be big. They're kind of often at like weird shapes or weird angles to allow for like corner pins and that kind of thing. This course was designed, I don't even know when, 1920s, 1930s, something like that, golden era of golf design in the Northeast. Over the years, it gets tree lined, a lot of trees. You look at the leaderboard for 2013, it's all like super accurate plotting type of golfers. Jim Furyk, Jason Duffner won back when he could play golf. He beat Keegan Bradley. Just like, and short guys all over the place, Stricker, Furyk, like all of those types of guys were all over that leaderboard. Andrew Green comes in, does a big redesign maybe 3 years ago. I'm not totally sure. Took out 600 some odd trees, really opened the course back up. His idea was to get it back to Ross's original version, but with extra length to compensate for the modern game. So now you've got 7,400 yard, basically par 70, where both the par fives are over 600 yards. They're true three-shot holes. Nobody's reaching these holes in two. There's not a ton of dog legs, but the fairways are like slanted and at angle, so sometimes you can hit a shot that looks like it's fine in the fairway and it kind of bleeds off into the rough as it dies out and rolls out. So I think the biggest thing for me is as I put in the plug, I want distance guys and I want total ball striking. Like my feel is that this is going to be just like a ball striker's ball striking major. Like most of my plug picks, the players I'm gonna be playing heavily. I care less about putting this week. I could end up being wrong, but I don't care about it too much. And I really want guys who are really up there in the total driving, so distance plus accuracy, and in total ball striking, which is basically all shots except for shots that are taken around the green or on the green. So guys who are really good with irons, maybe they're not the best putters. In difficult conditions like this and with course setups like this, Those are the kind of guys I want to play, and I play a different style of player for these events compared to events like we just saw with the Birdie Fest at the Byron Nelson. Like I will pick a whole different style of golfer versus weeks like this.
Great rundown there, Nero. And yeah, I mean, if you listen to any of the golfer interviews on Tuesday and today, every single one is talking about how tough the course is, how long it is, how thick the rough is. So it's going to be an extremely tough test. And obviously, we want to play some of the best golfers, but most of those golfers do have some higher ownership. But there are some that sneak under the radar, and we'll get to that a little bit later when we discuss who some of our favorite under the radar options are. Now, you mentioned the weather a little bit, Nero, and let's bring this up here really quickly. Let's go to Wind Finder, our trusted source for wind direction when it comes to PGA DFS, and on Wind Finder here at Nero, it doesn't necessarily show. Well, I guess it does show the temperature down here, and it's going to be relatively cold, especially on Thursday morning. 40s when some of these guys tee off, does get into the 50s later that afternoon, and then even up to the 60s and even 70s on Friday. But then over the weekend, we're back down to the 50s again. So, we're not playing Florida golf here, Nero. And then you bring in the wind on the wind gust, especially on Friday, where we get wind gusts of over 30 miles per hour. Do you think a wave advantage will materialize? And if it does, can we predict it? And I guess I'll let you answer that first before we talk about lineup strategies when it comes to it.
Yeah, sure. First of all, my historical track record in predicting wave advantages and weather advantages is poor, as Brian is well aware of. Oh, you look at the forecast now, and it certainly looks like there's a slight advantage to the Thursday morning, Friday afternoon guys. First of all, you get Thursday morning, they get a fresh greens and the freshest golf course they're going to see all week. And then Friday afternoon, it looks like they have less straight line wind, even though the gusts are still going to be in the 20-mile-an-hour range. But in the morning, the gusts are going to be in the 30 to 35-mile-an-hour range. So, if I had to guess, that's what I would say. I will stack both ways because wind forecasts are fickle, they change. But I will definitely stack more of the Thursday morning, Friday afternoon guys. It's not going to be a massive point of consideration for me, but I will use it to break ties, or if I'm getting down on some of my allocations, maybe shifting a couple guys up a few percentage points who are in a preferred wave like that Thursday morning, Friday afternoon. But if I have builds that I like and they're full of guys in the Thursday afternoon wave, fine by me. Like I don't care that much. I think the overall course conditions, the rough and the length of the course and all that stuff means more than the weather does. But in general, they're all going to have to play in cool weather with wind. And if it rains on overnight Friday into Saturday morning, like it looks like it might, then they're going to have a slowed down, even longer golf course on Saturday and maybe even on Sunday. So that's my view on the weather.
Yeah, as much as we like to try to predict the weather, and even in events where we don't think there will be a wave advantage, we saw it, I think, as recently as the Masters, where the afternoon advantage on Friday was close to 2 strokes at one point. And infamously, the Players' Championship last year, everyone thought the wave would be one way, ended up switching completely, and the wave that no one stacked ended up being optimal and gaining a stroke over the field. So if you're making 20 plus lineups, 150 plus lineups, hell, even if you're making 3 lineups, it is sometimes worth it just to meticulously stack a couple of lineups or a small sliver of your lineups for both of the waves, just in case something does materialize. But Nero, like you, I do agree that unless you're breaking ties between golfers, I'm not necessarily sure that if you're playing one lineup or you're having an overarching strategy that a wave advantage or tee times will dramatically come into play, at least in classic contests.
Totally agree.
Okay,
It's a small consideration for me this week and nothing more.
sounds good. All right, let's move on to the betting markets. If you watch this show on a weekly basis or the weeks that I actually do the show, you know that we like to dive into the betting markets. Mostly, we analyze sharp sports books who take plenty of sharp PGA action. We track the moves of golfers' odds to win from the time that the markets open until the time that they close. And by tracking golfers who have positive movement in their odds to win, generally we can get sharper sports book plays that impact our DFS lineups. And a lot of times ownership doesn't necessarily catch up. So we usually talk about them. We call them overlap plays, trifecta plays, sharp plays, or whatever you want to call them. Guys whose odds to win have improved at every single sharp sports book that we track. As of right now, we're recording this. It's live 5 p.m. Eastern. Well, I just pulled it about 30 minutes ago. We'll pull it again 8:30, 9 p.m. Eastern tonight, so make sure you check back in our Discord to see if there are any additions or subtractions. But Nero, there are 4 guys who have been hit at all of the sharp sports books. Some of them were hit very early in the week. I will throw the name at you. We'll talk about their ownership, and just give me your general thoughts on that player for this tournament. The first one is Tony Finau, who, if we bring up the Occupy model, OccupyFantasy.com ranks every golfer. FanDuel and DraftKings with projected ownership. We see Tony Finau checks in at 18%. One of the higher owned guys here, Nero. Thoughts on Finau this week?
Yeah, Finau to me is I would much rather play him than try and get cute and fade him. He's one of the guys I mentioned a couple of guys like this in the plug. We'll talk about one here in probably about 30 seconds. But I just would rather play him and get different elsewhere because such a good course fit. First of all, playing great. He just stiff armed John Rahm at the Mexico tournament. And just dominated him on a Sunday afternoon, which was the one weakness that Tony did have was like he didn't, wasn't able to close a lot of tournaments. Now he's won 4 of his last 12 or whatever the number is. And he toe to toe with Rahm just 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago and held him off and won by 3 or 4. He didn't even actually seem like he was really that bothered by it. And Rahm never got closer than a couple shots. So it doesn't mean that he's going to win. It just means that at $9,500, basically playing as good as the guys that are priced, 1,000 plus above him. And he's probably shed the one thing that was his weakness in majors, the ability to like close and compete late. Now he still hasn't done that yet in a really big tournament. Most of his wins have come in the smaller events, but all signs point to yes for Tony. So I have no interest in fading him. I will be at the field or above him, no question, even though he's going to be one of the most owned guys. One quick thing on that, I think I mentioned it in the plug also. The nice thing about depth of the field this week is that nobody gets to ridiculous ownership levels. There are just so many good plays at decent price points that no one really gets absolutely crazy and ends up at 35, 40, 45, 50, as we've been seeing these last couple of weeks for ownership. No one's getting there, even though Tony's a great play and makes a ton of sense. And maybe he'll be 21% instead of 18%, but fine. He's not going to end up being 30% or anything, close to that. So because of that, I'd much rather just play him and get weird somewhere else.
Yeah, those are some of the toughest weeks when we had Scheffler or Rahm at 40%, 50%.
Yes.
You end up making a game theory decision as opposed to whatever you may think is optimal when it comes to projections or line moves or whatever it may be. So that can be difficult. And like you said, right now we have Scheffler as the highest projected at 24% and a few guys below that. And again, we'll discuss ownership here in a little bit. But you mentioned that Finau at 9,500 is just as good of a play, or maybe in just as good of form as some of these guys at the top 10K or higher. That leads into what we generally discuss in every major event, or even elevated events now, in that playing more balanced builds, and even balanced in the sense that you're just not playing a 10K or higher golfer, has been a very positive expected value lineup construction over the past X amount of years in majors because of the depth of the field, as you mentioned. Now, Scheffler and Rahm have done their absolute best to torch this theory early to start this year.
And torch my bankroll and yours right along with it.
That is exactly right. But, Nero, despite Scheffler's play, despite Rahm being red hot to start the year, this type of construction is still going to overwhelmingly be the way to build in majors, starting with 1 to 2 9K guys.
I think the biggest distinction is that even if Rahm or Scheffler win, they cannot be – there are many avenues for them to not be in the winning lineup in weeks like this because you can have so many of the 9K and 8K guys that take up second place, fourth place, sixth place, eighth place, and you can't fit those guys into a Rahm or Scheffler build versus those other weeks where when they win, it's really hard to win a tournament without them in your lineup because A, they might have dominated the tournament, and B, it's just a lot more random who else shows up in the top 10. Big events, majors, with tough golf courses, it tends to shrink some of the randomness that's inherent in PGA. Not everything. I mean, when Sunday rolls around or even Saturday morning rolls around, they're guaranteed to be 5 to 10 decent to big names that miss the cut, and you're going to be like, how did those guys miss the cut? He's so good, you know. But like that's just the way that it goes.
Yep. And to your point, we've actually seen both of those guys individually, Scheffler and Rahm, get priced out when they've won a major. Scheffler was not in the winning Millie lineup when he won the Masters. Rahm, when he won the U.S. Open, was not in the winning Millie lineup that year. So just excellent points. If they don't win, you still have outs, which is always nice to have. See, we have a couple questions here in the chat. Let's get to these really quickly. Super Pete says, favorite player under 7,000, not named Jaeger. So if we sort by price here, Nero, we look at Jaeger, who is priced at, let's look him in the model here. He is 6,700 exactly. His 1% projected ownership. He may be a little higher than that, especially in smaller contests. But under 7K, Nero, who do you like in that range?
I'm looking right now.
And as you're looking, by the way, we got That Best in the chat says, it's how he felt last week, fading Day and Scheffler, which I also did. Still broke even though they finished first and third or whatever it was. So if they don't go crazy, you profit, which is exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think my favorite play in the sub, well, two of them would probably be, and they're both at 6,600. It'd be Brendan Steele and Hayden Buckley.
Hayden Buckley and Brendan Steele getting some love in the betting markets themselves. So we got Brendan Steele 6,600. Then we have Hayden Buckley right there at 6,600 as well. So there you go, Super Pete. And Dot Bets also says 8,700 for Homa. Is that a misprice? Ownership doesn't necessarily agree with the mispricing idea, Nero, but I do think that Homa's a fantastic play at his price, going to the point of a guy who's been playing really well for the better half of the last year or two, and should be higher probably.
100% agree with that. I think he's probably appropriately priced for what his odds are in the outright market. If you combine that with maybe some of his form, which is good but not like red hot amazing. But in these types of tournaments, it's just better to take Max Homa, who's obviously outstanding at the game of golf, and has a game that fits the course and fits majors, and he does well in big tournaments, and get more of him at a depressed ownership. And his ownership is depressed because, maybe he's slightly overpriced for his odds. I would rather, those are the type of guys that in these types of events, I would much rather play rather than having to go down, to 6,900 and say, okay, I hope Aaron Wise has rebounded from his, the break that he's taken for his mental health, because Wise has great stats for a 6,900 player, but there's so much more risk inherent with that. A lot less risk inherent with a Max Homa, even though he's not going to show up great in optimizers and everything because he's not like, just this perfect like mathematical value. But in the game that we're playing, he's great value because his worth as a golfer isn't matched by his ownership level, because his ownership level is driven by the math of his salary and his projection and his odds to win in the outright market.
And in that same exact bucket, and if we talk about course fits and we talk about unequivocally being overpriced by the betting markets based on his DK salary, it's got to be Shane Lowry too, right? Nero at 3% projected ownership.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, I don't even want to talk about how much Shane Lowry I'm going to end up having relative to the field. But it's the same thing. It's like, yes, from a math perspective, optimizer perspective, projection perspective, is Shane Lowry a good play? Of course he's not, because he's overpriced for where you don't even have to look at the math. Just look at the guys that he's priced around. He should be down in like the 7,800 range with Adam Scott, Keegan Bradley, Justin Rose, like all obviously very fine players. And that's probably a little bit closer to his level, but it's like, can I pay the extra $500, get different elsewhere, and have someone who's sub 5%, is a major champion, is born to play in cool, windy conditions on tough golf courses? Like, yes, I would much rather play that all day. But the players who play this play DFS in a more math based fashion, they're not gonna play him, and I get it. Like I understand why they would not, but I will play him all day.
Yes, absolutely. And talking about price fit and odds, the best way you can do this on your own is to open the model, sort by DraftKings salary, and then you can look at their odds to win column and just see who stands out, whether they're overpriced or underpriced. And Lowry at our partner sportsbook of Sugar House, extremely overpriced compared to the guys that are priced above him and below him. That's how they qualify. And two, Lowry's characteristics, Bet says a lot of people that he's listening to or reading are saying they want grinders this week. What's the best way to determine a grinder stat wise? Is it bogey avoidance? I would say that probably also scrambling of some sort. Nero, do you have any other thoughts to add there?
No, I think those are both right. Bogey avoidance and scrambling stats. Maybe you could substitute like strokes gained around the green, maybe as a potential one way to look. I do it a little bit more by my eyeballs, but I'm at a depth of the golf rabbit hole that none of y'all want to be in. So no one wants to join me where I am.
No, man. I'm starting down that rabbit hole of playing golf and watching golf, and it's a journey that I see ending very poorly. So I can attest to what you're saying. So let's go back to the betting market.
I just saw there was a great quote. Sorry, real quick. There was a great quote from Ben Affleck or something where he compared golf people to meth people. He said the only difference between golf addicts and meth addicts is the golf addicts have better teeth. The rest of them, he's like, they never see their family. They're gone all the time. Like they're not present ever. Like, just, it was great. It was pretty funny.
That is, yeah, that's a comparison that I could live without. So back to the betting markets. You mentioned there was another guy in the plug that is similar to Finau in the sense that you're not going to get cute and try to fade them. That is Patrick Cantlay, who is another sharp sportsbook overlap play this week. He is top of the model. He is 20% projected ownership. Why are you not going to get cute with Cantlay?
Great course fit. Might be the best total driver of the golf ball on the PGA Tour in this short time window. I think longer time window, it's Rory, and there's no question about it. But in the last, like, let's say 2 or 3 months, it's probably Patrick Cantlay. He's not quite as far, but maybe for all of 2023, no one has a better like distance plus accuracy combo than he does. I really like the switch to Joe LaCava as his caddy. So Tiger's former caddy that's now on Cantlay's bag. I play the caddy changes, somewhat regularly. I like it as a little bit of an angle. Golf is a very mental and emotional game, and it gives a lot of these guys a bump just to have a different person on the bag, get a different voice, someone else kind of silently motivating them as they're playing. And I think that's going to end up being a very good change for Cantlay. So yeah, for all those reasons, no interest in fading him or being under. I'd rather be at the field or over and get different somewhere else.
Totally agree. Two other guys on the list this week, a little bit less ownership. One is gaining steam, as you pointed out in the Wednesday update in the plug today. That first one is Gary Woodland. Speaking of driving the ball long and straight, Gary Woodland is on the overlap list this week. Nero, his ownership we have projected up to 11%. That is up from single digits as of yesterday. Maybe he gets a little higher. How high do you think his ownership gets? And let's bring up Woodland's game logs here. And, this is a guy that has a major under his belt, granted a few years ago. But how's he been playing? Thoughts on him being an overlap play?
He's been playing a lot better recently. His putter is still possibly permanently broken. I don't know if Gary's putter ever is like totally functional. It's usually somewhere between broken and okay. But even for him, he's putted like horribly these last like 2 months, and he's still put together a string of good finishes. The other thing is he's a great fit for like what I'm looking for, right? He's just a total ball striking type of player who doesn't get it done with his short game, gets it all done with his longer clubs. So, you can if I look at his last finishes, he missed the cut at the Arnold Palmer, and that's it. The last cut he missed was in the first event of the year at the Sony Open. And, 14th, 39th, 31st, 14th in his last 4 starts. So, pretty good form. He's getting no help at all from his putter. Maybe he catches a little bit of fire this week with the putter, and then look out, because he certainly can do the ball striking as well as the guys that are priced, much higher than he is.
And we both obviously agree when it comes to the putter, that's the club we're most willing to overlook when it comes to recent performance because the variance just inherent in that skill. Now, Woodland falls into that same category as Shane Lowry, whose putter has let him down recently, and hell, even Rory to an extent, who's
Yes,
lost strokes
totally.
putting at the last two majors where he's missed cuts. Am I wrong in thinking that this week I'm not that concerned about putters because it's not a birdie fest. We don't need someone to go 20 under. We just need guys to grind, make some putts, and you're going to be in contention by the weekend if you can make that happen. And God forbid, maybe the luck turns around and they gain strokes putting this week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, someone like Gary Woodland is probably he's never going to be a good putter. Like for the rest of his life, he'll just never be a good putter. Like so, fine. On the weeks where he's an okay putter, then he can contend and win. And on the weeks where his strengths are overvalued relative to the rest of the field, so his strengths, long irons, driver, all of his longer clubs, and they're absolutely overvalued this week compared to the rest of the field. Then that helps him out. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of risk there. His putter could not show up, and he's going to miss the cut by two, and he'll never have had a chance because he lost 3.5 strokes putting every round on Thursday and on Friday.
Which you can get with any guy once you get below 8K. So might as well take the
Sure.
guy who's got the best ball striking. So final guy on the overlap list, and we'll move this along a little quickly as we get to 5:30 Eastern, is Mido Pereira. And that leads us into the live guys, who we had an extensive discussion on when the Masters came around. Ownership has creeped up quite a bit on a lot of these guys compared to where they were in the Masters, Nero. So talk to me about Mido, a little under the radar, our first sub 10% trifecta overlap sharp sportsbook play. How Mido looks for you, and then how do you think the rest of these live guys will compete in this event?
I think Mido looks good enough for me. I don't. He doesn't like wow me or anything, but I think he's a good fit. Obviously, he was right here down the stretch at the last PGA Championship. Very different course at Southern Hills in Tulsa. Especially if you saw the Netflix documentary, you saw how Mido melted down there in the last couple holes. But he's fine to me. We talked at the Masters. I still have interest in getting over the field on many of the live guys compared to maybe a lot of other people. And yes, their ownership is up, but it's not up by a ton. It's like instead of being projected from like 3 to 6% ownership for most of them, now the better live players are like from 6 to 10%, maybe 11, like at the absolute most for someone like Kepka. I think I would still rather be over the field. They showed well at the Masters. The Masters is different because it's the Masters. It's the same course every year. And some guys like Mickelson just, they know the course, love it. They feel it, like all those things work in their favor. Less of that stuff works in their favor here. But still, the fact that three of them finished in the top 5 or 6 at the Masters tells me that because again, remember, you're not finishing in the top 10 of a major unless you had a good week.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a good week, you're not finishing in the top 10 of a major. So what we're really trying to say is on the weeks where the live guys have a good week, can they still finish in the top 10 of a major? And for our purposes, that means can they still finish in a winning GPP lineup? Then I would say that answer is yes, 100%. I have no doubt about that. If it's a two-man show on Sunday between Brooks Koepka and John Rahm, yeah, I'm going to take John Rahm. He's been in the heat of battle more often than Koepka. He plays stiffer competition than him every single week. Those things are true. In that scenario, Koepka's probably in the winning GPP lineup. So I would still rather be over the field on most of the live guys compared to I think any of the content folks that are out there.
Totally agree. And the Masters just proved the point that these guys are still competitive golfers and they're capable of high level golf. So Mido obviously is on the list. Just briefly, Nero, who's your favorite of the live group that you're looking to get the most of?
I would say probably DJ or yeah, probably Joaquin Neiman. Probably those two. I think they're both exceptional course fits. They both do most of their damage with the driver. Sets up the rest of their game. DJ just won last week on live. I still think he's got some axes to grind in these big events. It's the guys that have chips on their shoulder that I know are going to bring it extra in terms of focus for these weeks that I prefer. So your Patrick Reeds, your Jays. Maybe, Brooks also certainly fits in that category. But yeah, if I had to pick my two favorite for this week, it'd be those two.
Okay, Nero, it's 5:35. Do you have 5 more minutes for us?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Yep.
then let's rapid fire this final section of ownership. What to do with the chalk and our favorite sub 5% plays. It's a real slim pickings this week, but I promise you have some. Let's rapid fire the questions in the chat also right now. Dotbat says thoughts on Corey Connors. A sentence or two, Nero, on Corey Connors this week.
He fits the mold perfectly. Ball striking machine. Like, definitely want to have some Corey Connors this week.
And then Tim F says, thanks for doing the show. Good luck, guys. Thoughts on Tom Kim this week, who not necessarily long off the tee, correct, Nero? But how does he fit this course?
I think as I put in the Wednesday update, there was the video that was posted on Twitter. Joel Dahmen talking about how the fairways were firmer than he thought they were going to be, and that he thought the shorter guys could compete, and you could get an eclectic leaderboard by the time you get to Sunday afternoon instead of just bombers. So I still prefer the distance guys and the ball striking long iron type of players. However, I will mix some shorter players into my player pool, and Tom Kim would absolutely be a candidate to be one of those players. I just don't have a lot of interest in getting well over the field on those types of players this week.
Fair enough.
And like I said, I could be wrong, and Sunday afternoon you could have a number of shorter guys on the leaderboard at the top because the course ends up playing really firm and fast, and that ends up mattering a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the best part about these majors, see how everything all plays out. So let's go back to the model here. 3 minutes left in the show. We have about 10 or 12 guys, 15% or higher. Any one of them that you're not particularly interested in playing a ton of. The one that sticks out to me mostly is just his price and his chalkiness is Wyndham Clark, who is a little underpriced, obviously, but 19% projected ownership wouldn't shock me, obviously, if Wyndham Clark missed the cut. But who sticks out to you as either a guy that I'm willing to get over the field on, or I'm not going to have as much as the field does?
Yeah, I think you and I have been pretty consistent in what we've talked about and what the data shows, and that generally we want to stay away from chalky plays that are in the 7K range, just because they don't tend. Now, a little bit different here because you have a higher quality of player in the 7K range than you usually have. But yeah, I tend to not play guys as much when they're coming off a win. Wyndham Clark is coming off of a win. I'm not finished building, but I'm certain I'll be under the field on him. I'll definitely be under the field on Jason Day. He's also not practicing this week at the course in order to like rest up and try and be ready to go for Thursday. And he just won last week, so I'd certainly have less interest there. Siwoo, who I usually really like, and I probably will have some of him, but he's another one that's fairly chalky, 7,100 at a lower price point. Obviously, of course, he's underpriced for his price, but again, he's not the same quality of player as a Shane Lowry type of situation where you have the opposite, where he's overpriced. So this is the week where I'd rather play the overpriced guys heavier at depressed ownership rather than trying to get up to the field or get over the field on the guys who are obviously underpriced for their odds.
If there's a course that you don't want to practice on at all, it's definitely one of the hardest courses that they'll play all year. So we'll see if this works out for Jason Day. And finally, maybe we'll go sub 7% plays. Let me do a little filter here on the model. I'll give you a couple guys that stick out to me. Nero, Justin Rose is one. We saw him win in bad weather earlier this season. Let's see, there was one more name that I want to talk about here, and it was we talked about Shane Lowry already. Harris English is popping a lot. He's gotten some betting market moves, some respect from sharp handicappers. So Harris English sticks out to me. And then we talk about live guys. Bryson, if distance plays a part like we think it will, obviously didn't help him at Augusta, but had his best live finish he's had since he joined that organization in his last event. So maybe his game's coming around a little bit. He's talked about getting healthier. I could see taking a shot on Bryson at 7,400. But maybe you could talk me off that ledge, or you have some other thoughts.
Who always asks the one player that you're playing that I shouldn't play? Somebody always asks that question in chat every time, and I was like, before it started, I was like, I already know my answer. It's Bryson. I'm playing Bryson, and you should absolutely not play him.
Well, that doesn't talk me off the edge, I guess. So I guess I'm playing him right along with you. Anybody else that stands out for you?
Yeah, I mean Rose is a good call. Again, just like look at your names: Colin Morikawa, 6% ownership. I mean, major winner. Is he in the most amazing form? No, of course he's not. But like all the things that he does well, fit the course well, driver, long irons, iron player, ball striker, much better with that than his putter. So he would be interesting to me. Keith Mitchell, another one of those types, ball striking style machine. Lowry, DeChambeau for the distance. English, absolutely, ball striking machine. Brendan Steele, also a big, much better on the ball striking stats than he is anywhere else. Jordan Smith, maybe at 3%, who's like one of the top distance drivers on the European tour. So I don't mind him at all. Peters, another live guy who's a bomber. You could talk me into some of him also.
Fair enough. All right, I have one more. It's Cameron Davis, who, if you've been a part of Occupy Fantasy since the start of the year, has probably driven you mad if you played Cameron Davis. But 1%, let's see if he can bounce back. He's gotten a little bit of love in the betting markets. I'll take a shot at him at
Oh,
1%.
Cam Davis is a very good. Well, actually, both Cams, Cam Young and Cam Davis, but Cam Davis is a good play this week. I've been much like Ryan Palmer until last week. I've been wrong on Cam Davis every single week. Every time I play him, he's terrible. When I play less of him or don't play him at all, he plays really good. But stylistically, all striker, bomber, not great with the short game, does all of his damage with his longer clubs. Like he's a great fit for this. And grew up in Australia, so wind is not going to bother him in the slightest. The cold weather might bother him, but the wind's not going to. So he's certainly. And by the way, all the guys at 5%, 6%, and lower, they got warts. This is a game of like trying to figure out what warts am I willing to overlook to put these guys in my player pool.
It's very true. And like Ryan Palmer, you can be as wrong as many times as you want. But we talk about these sub 5% plays. When you are right, like Palmer last week, and he finishes top 3 or whatever he finished, generally you win a decent amount of money. So, all right, Nero,
Unless you surround them with all the wrong players like I did, and then you don't win anything. But yes, you are correct, generally speaking. On those weeks you get it right, you can be rewarded richly.
yes, and that is a disaster when that does happen. So, final question here, and it's more of a strategic player pool question. I'll give my thoughts, Nero, and you can chime in. Brandon says, how many players should be in my pool if I'm only doing 2 single injury lineups? My answer would be it depends on the size of the contest. Now, if you're playing smaller contests, you're thinking 50 to 300 players. These are small field GPPs. Easily winnable, not easily winnable, but more easily winnable than larger field contests with only one lineup. Generally, what I do in those contests, I try not to have any overlap if I'm playing just 2 lineups in 2 to 300 players, 12 different golfers in 6 lineups. And if you go back and look at all the simulation-based PGA DFS players, Whistles Go Woo come to mind, who's a great small field player. He mirrors the exact same strategy. I looked at it first. I said, let me see what these other guys do, and I found that he backs it up with that. So that's very interesting. However, Nero, I would say if you're playing larger contests and you have to be 1,000 players or more with just one lineup, you have to have more overlap because you need more conviction to get one of those lineups to the top.
Yeah, 100%. Again, it's the same philosophy of like, you're only going to be right, in these, especially for PGA, you're only going to be right a couple times a year. So you just need to accept that. And I mean, like, really right, like really nailing it, maybe twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. So in those bigger contests, even when you get it right, if you're not properly leveraged around the players that you got right, you're still not going to have as many chances as you should at getting first place. So anything above, say, like 500 players, or 500 entrants into a contest, I want to have some overlap on if it's like a 3 entry max or a 2 entry type of contest. I want to have a little bit of overlap in those. Below that, I totally agree with Brian. I'm trying to get as differentiated as possible, especially in the, well, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Like anything under that, I agree. That's the strategy I would use.
Perfect. Nero, we all appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy and chaotic schedule to come talk with us. It's appreciated every single time we have a major show. So thank you for doing that. For those of you who are still watching, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We do these videos for PGA every single Wednesday. So subscribing is the best way to support the channel. It's free to do, but it also helps you get notified whenever we go live or upload these videos. Give us a thumbs up if you appreciate it. It helps others on YouTube find this content. Again, helps out the channel if you want to show your support. Any questions you have, join our Discord server, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. 9 p.m. Eastern tonight, I'll post the final version of these Sharp Sportsbook plays, so you don't want to miss that. All the links for the content you saw on the screen are in the description below. occupyfantasy.com/membership. Come be a member, get Nero's expertise, get our tools. It's a fantastic time. So, Lots of great questions in the chat. Any other questions? I'll be in Discord through the end of the night. Nero will pop in and out. So guys, thanks for watching. Nero, thank you as always. You can find Nero really nowhere. Just Niromada in the DFS streets and in our Discord server. I'm at Brian Jester FF for Occupy Fantasy. Thank you for listening and good luck at the PGA Championship.